Hi to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. I'm very much excited to be here with you. And my name is, as he presented, is Neomi Dov, and I'm the CEO and the founder of Impact EU VAT SaaS platform. And here is my amazing team. I think you won't disagree with me when I say that the last 3 years in the e-commerce market were unlike any of the previous years. And I will put our personal lives aside because otherwise we'll have to stay for a couple of days. But anyways, seriously, I'm here today to take you through a quick journey to demonstrate the dramatic changes in the global market, how they affected the e-commerce market, and how the market adapted to those changes. We'll have a drill down into the major regulatory changes that the market has faced and how the market faced with those changes accordingly. Steve Jobs once said that you cannot connect the dots by looking forwards, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So stay tuned when we are connecting the dots, and we'll get to the second part of its expressions as we go. So I would like to start with a quick overview on the e-commerce market and mainly a focus on the cross-border market. According to JP Morgan, mobile commerce is the primary growth in Europe. On 2022, the total turnover in the market have reached to 797 billion euros, while 40% out of it was the cross-border market, equal to 287 billion euros and more than 1 million e-sellers. I think those numbers speak for themselves. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 pandemic, and that was a very surreal time for us all. If there is something we all can agree on, is that pandemic had the greatest effect on mobile commerce and on consumers' behavior. And this also created significant challenges in the market, mainly since global trade faced major disruptions. What considered as simple supply chain was actually much more complex, much more dramatic, and people had to change to deal with new challenges that they never faced before. And what's demonstrated is that 60% of the businesses were facing significant changes in their supply chains. What we've seen is actually what's demonstrated here pretty clearly is that most of the airlines and shipping lines were facing a lot of reduced frequency, and the capacity was much lower. Accordingly, we had much more congestion in the main ports. This leads to long transit time, and more significantly, and I think all of those that were dealing with shipping at that time can state that the shipping costs were unreasonable. And just to give you a bit of clue about it, an average price for a TEU from China to the European market started around $1,600 before the pandemic, and it increased to more than $10,000 during the pandemic, which is more than 600%. And those numbers are, I think this is, we haven't faced it in the history ever. These are really, really dramatic changes. The combination of the rapid growth in demand by online consumer and the complex supply chain forced the market to adopt new methods in order to overcome the gap. Within a year, the market demonstrated a remarkable ability to obtain an effective supply chain. As a result, new routes were implemented. As you can see, we were able to get from point A to point B. The congestion ratio was significantly reduced. We had more ocean ports that were different from the main ports. We were using other ports to bypass this backlog. And accordingly, we have seen a significant increase in air freight against ocean freight. The ocean freight was significantly decreased. And surprisingly, we became better than ever. The market demonstrated an ability to sustain an effective supply chain in order to match the growing demand. The more effective supply chain became, so is the better experience consumers gained. And accordingly, so was the higher expectation from online sellers for higher performance. New high standards were naturally set in the market, where the tight pool market was shortened than ever, and consumers want to have it all instantly, which means that competition these days involves more focus on higher performance and higher service level than ever. And the outcome is higher supply chain costs that actually make those e-commerce sellers to deal with almost an impossible mission in order to stay in the game. And just when online sellers got used to the new reality, on 1st of January 2021, there was the Brexit. UK, the top leading country in e-commerce sales in Europe, decided within the same breath to adopt new VAT rules. Those new VAT rules force sellers to register for VAT in the UK, report, file, and pay the VAT on their sales. But what happens is that all those cross-border sales within UK and EU and vice versa, that before the regulation were considered as domestic sales, are now considered as cross-border sales, and VAT is in due. Moreover, accordingly, the UK market was facing a 40% decrease for the sales of cross-border from UK to the European market, and these numbers are huge. Moreover, the main issue is that, as you know, most of the sellers that were conducting the fulfillment centers in UK were forced to either split their stock between UK and EU, or they had to relocate their stock to the EU. This forced them to bear enormous costs, and those costs were almost jeopardizing their business. Those who were refusing to adapt to the new rules had to deal with huge conversion rate decreasing, and they could not actually finance those expenses. 6 months later, on July 2021, a major dramatic regulation taking place in the EU market. And what happened is that the EU authorities decided to implement the EU VAT regulation that forced sellers to register for VAT in Europe, report, file, and pay the VAT on a monthly basis. This regulation was in a purpose to recap more than 15 billion euros of lost VAT that were actually paid by the end consumer but never reached the EU authorities. For cross-border sales up to 150 euros, they decided that the marketplaces and the platforms will be liable for the VAT as long as a 10,000 euros threshold is not being exceeded. Moreover, there wasn't any solution for sales with a value exceeding 150 euros, which forced the sellers to either pay for those door-to-door services and increase their cost, deduct their profit. Sometimes they were not profitable at all. And the other alternative is to ship it in a DDU terms, where your client is forced to deal with two factors. The first factor is that your client is being surprised because he didn't pay the whole amount upon checkout, and then he was getting a call from the customs, hey, you have another 40 or 50 euros to pay, and this is something that actually reduces the confidence of the clients. European clients are not in favor of this kind of phenomenon. Eventually, the conversion rate is much lower due to this reason. For cross-border sales domestically, all the sellers are forced to register for VAT at least in one EU member state, report, file, and pay the VAT on a monthly basis. And this is something that forces them to appoint a local tax expert to push information to this tax expert on a monthly basis. All of a sudden, they are being informed that there are different kinds of reports. Each report has its own format. You have to deal with other information. And it makes them to be in a position where they pay huge amount of money in order to be compliant. And in the same time, they are not feeling like this burden is being taken away from them. So this is the entire picture of the e-commerce market in terms of how the regulation, how the regulation forced the sellers to deal with it. But additionally, these days, and I'm not sure everybody knows, but EU sellers that granted the VAT number, but they are not EU established sellers, are now being limited with their abilities to make importation into Europe. And now their VAT number is only valid for local procurement and local sales. It means that if your vendor is in China or the US, you will need some kind of a local representative to handle the importation on your behalf, and they'll make a domestic sale to your local VAT number, which is additional costs. And here is the funny thing about the implication of the VAT regulation on the significant players in the market. The thing is, the smaller you are, the less turnover you make, but you would expect that the burden will be smaller as well, but apparently that the burden is much higher than your business is able to take. And the bigger you are, then more turnover you lose. Although you make more money, you have more funds, but you lose more money according to what you expect to earn in your turnover, because sellers are incapable to deal with this huge burden. And this demonstrates very well what is the significant role that sellers are playing in this market. I mean, they are the true engine to move this market forward and to match the growing demand. And if sellers cannot get a seamless solution to deal with this burden and comply with those rules, they will be unable to sustain a market which is a very stable market. We will be facing a market with a lot of chaos. And let's see what are the implications for the single seller. So a single seller calls a tax agent and says, I want to be registered for VAT. So in the first stage, he's paying around 4,500 euros for the first setup. Then he has to fill around 13 documents and wait another 100 days. By that time, for instance, if he wants to work in Belgium and sustain their local domestic warehouse, he's unable to do that because he has to wait for his VAT number. He cannot sign a contract with a fulfillment center, and he cannot operate his shop properly. Additionally, on a monthly basis, so for a total year, he has to pay some amount to his tax experts to report and file and pay the VAT. For the VAT payment, sometimes the sellers are being forced to do it by themselves, but they have to push the information, pay the monthly basis, and it gets to almost 6,000 euros per year. And totally, there are 60 reports every year that seller has to submit in order to comply with the EU VAT rules. Nevertheless, in every country where stock is being managed, additional VAT number is mandatory, which means that those numbers that you are seeing here could be double and triple and so on. Not to mention that you will have to deal with double and triple bookkeeping, so the effort and the burden and what it takes of you removes you from focusing on your core business, and this is something that should be taken into consideration. So the reason I'm standing here today is that 4 years ago, I was approached by Amazon partners to sustain some kind of a solution for the cross-border sellers in order to comply with the VAT rules when I had a Dutch company, another company that time. And I felt that there is too much that I need to investigate around this topic, and I decided to pause and expose and check this issue with my tax expert very deeply. And while doing that, I was recognizing that there is new regulation coming in that nobody knows about. And eventually, people are not planning how to cope with those implications, and something creates a real vacuum in this market to sustain infrastructure where sellers can cope with this new reality. And that's what actually made me decide that I want to establish Impact. I've realized that we need a seamless tool to enable sellers to grow and not to put additional burden on them with which they can barely comply and can barely deal. So a little bit about us. We're a Dutch-based company established in 2019. We've granted a special permit from the Dutch authorities to act as representative platform. And in frame of this permit, we are able today to have a special leverage for our clients where they can import goods with zero VAT through specific gateways in Europe and pay the VAT only upon sale. After we granted the permit, we have combined this permit with a special innovative SaaS platform that automates the entire reporting, filing, and payments to the authorities. So we're only focusing on seamless solution. This is what we are trying to aim, and I think we did it well. So the way we did it, I will give you a little of a drill down of the way we implemented our solution. We have combined our license with smart technology. Smart technology is about being able to reflect on real time what happens, make you submit real-time reports that are accurate and not exposing you to questions and penalties. This year, there were 1.9 billion euros of penalties by the European Union to those who were not able to report or file or do the things as they should. We added into it the invoicing, which actually aligned perfectly with your sales that are coming into our system on real time. So the invoicing is actually what we present to the authorities, and everything is done according to the regulation. And there are very specific details that you have to follow, which we already implement. Every single assignment that our system gets by connecting to your online shop is assigned automatically to the relevant tax report. So there is no manual job. There is no reporting from your side to push to us. Everything is being done according to specific parameters that are monitoring your supply chain on real time. We're connected to all airlines, shipping lines. We're connected to your WMS warehouses. We can monitor every kind of movement on real time and create the report and documentation that we need for your behalf to sustain a compliant VAT solution. Okay. So as I've mentioned, Impact is all about seamless VAT, meaning this is the only platform which removes the entire responsibility and burden from sellers to ourselves. It means that we provide an instant solution to our clients and removing the entire burden by minimum effort, max coverage. It's 27 EU member states and the UK market with zero risk. And from the moment the client appoints us to act on his behalf, the authorities cannot reach him in terms of they cannot say, hey, you did something wrong. They can only reach to us, and we already know what kind of measures we need to do, and we prevent them upfront. This entire coverage is being achieved within 5 minutes. So basically, all that you see here is, and what the market knows today is the traditional process. Register for VAT? No, we don't need it. Risking by having inaccurate reports? No, we don't have it. Increasing your positive cash flow by 20% is a significant issue for SMBs, while you pay VAT only when your clients paid to you and not before. So if you have stock and you don't know how much time it will take you to sell it, then you're not exposed in that manner and you reduce your risk. Additionally, we are providing you a full coverage, and this is the whole cycle of providing you the best infrastructure to deal with your core business. To give you a better understanding about Impact's platform, Impact is capable to covering all kinds of scenario. Every use case have its own solution, and it's designed according to specific packages. We have either you have a B2C client or you have a B2B client. We can cover it automatically by connecting to your online shops. In addition, we're proud to announce that these days we're launching our B2B offline solution for traditional sales companies that are selling in Europe, but they don't have online sales, and they want to comply with the VAT rules. They can actually connect to our platform, and they upload the products, they can create the clients can buy from them instantly from that access of URL, and they can also open this URL to be like a marketplace, or they can have it like a closed circle for themselves. So, and in case that you already have your VAT numbers, but you're dealing with too much overhead in terms of reporting and filing, and you don't want to have more people on your payroll to deal with those issues, and it costs you too much, you want to have a better control. I hear too much stories about companies that are telling me and clients that they hire the tax expert. Sometimes the report is not being filed on time, and they're getting penalties or they're getting questioned, and then they need to do something later, and it's more money every time that you have to approach this tax expert, costs you more. So here, it works the same way for you as it works for Impact. You can upload your VAT numbers, connect your online shop, and generate your reports seamlessly in a press button, and it reduces your risk in 100% and gives you a better and more secure infrastructure for your ongoing business. Our mission in Impact is to create a better ecosystem. And creating an ecosystem, it actually can be achieved only through partnership, because today, single seller has to use at least 5 to 7 different service providers to have full coverage for all what he needs. And we believe that we must invest into providing clients to contribute to this market growth and infrastructure where you can manage your business remotely by a press button. And this can be achieved through a partnership with companies that are in the ecosystem and related to what we do in some kind of a manner. So whether if you're a SaaS company and your clients are just purchasing proxies from you, but they have other headache that we can resolve, then we can connect and provide even a better value, a greater value to your clients. And whether if you're a tax advisor and you want to be focused on advising, you want to use your knowledge, you don't want to hire too many people in order to generate only the reports in the last minute where you have growing demand, then you can use our tool and use your reporting seamlessly, and then what you have left with is to see what other added value services you can provide to your clients. Payment providers can increase their turnover by providing a green line to their clients for their sales in Europe. And this kind of cooperation can create higher turnover. Same is also for fulfillment centers who cannot sign contracts with their clients because their clients are in absence of a VAT number in that specific country. So you work until you have to convince the client, you give them the price and everything, then you realize he doesn't have the VAT number, then you wait. By that time, he's speaking with other candidates and maybe he can get another price. Here you get an instant solution by syncing to our systems, which leverage your time to market. Essentially, it's the same for freight forwarders and e-commerce platform. It goes without saying, because e-commerce platform can easily increase their turnover by connecting to a partner like Impact, because all their clients can be compliant seamlessly, more accounts, more turnover. So if you remember in the beginning of my speech, I was talking about Steve Jobs and what he said about connecting the dots. And Steve Jobs said that you have to trust yourself that you will be able to connect the dots and see the full picture. I hope I was able to provide you the full picture about how crucial it is to provide sustainable infrastructure, mainly focused on technology, to overcome a huge gap that's created in the market that actually have too much impact, negative impact on our SMBs. SMBs cannot grow today because they have too much overhead, too much commissions, too much responsibility. In the other end, the market cannot survive without SMBs. And bigger companies cannot survive without them as well. So the more cooperation we have, the more we will connect the dots, the more we will create seamless infrastructure, the better experience consumers will get. And this is what impact is all about, and I hope we'll be able to achieve it and grow the further we go. So if you have any questions, thank you.